This recording is being brought to you by the Human Race Clothing. The aims of the Human Race Clothing are three. The first is to petition for the KKK to be banned as a terrorist organisation. The second is to petition for human rights in the US of A. And the third is for human rights to be taught to children in elementary school, in all schools where there is free education. The situation in the USA, every problem in the USA would be solved if America would give its citizens human rights. I'm going to read out these articles because I'm at a loss as to why leaders and activists are not calling for human rights. They're calling for equal rights, for police to stop killing them and all these other things, but human rights covers everything from free healthcare to a universal payment if you fall upon hard times, to the right to protest and assemble, to be protected, to be viewed as equal, to not be terrorized, to feel safe. All of these things are human rights, so I'm seriously at a loss why nobody is calling for it. I don't know if it's this mentality of America does for itself and likes to do everything on its personalities and its character and be entertained, but there's nothing to entertain yourself with. You don't need characters, you don't need saviors, you don't need all of this dramatics and theatrics. This whole situation is turning into entertainment, and it's not entertaining at all. The USA needs human rights and has declined its citizen human rights. If they did have human rights, they could, when they are not happy about something that America is doing or failing to do, they can basically take America to court. America can be held accountable for actions that the Supreme Court is not taking action on, for actions that are not acceptable, like the KKK even existing. If the Supreme Court in America is not going to call them a terrorist organization and ban them, then the American people, with their human rights, can go to another court that holds America accountable and say, look, they're terrorizing people. What they're doing accounts to this, this, and this, and it breaks all of these amendments. Our human rights are being violated. Could probably even seek asylum if you wanted to. So I feel it's important. I feel people must not be aware. Let's begin. Universal Declaration of Human Rights Preamble. Whereas recognition of the inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all its members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Whereas disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts which have outraged the conscience of mankind, and the advent of a world in which human beings shall enjoy freedom of speech and belief, and freedom from fear and want, has been proclaimed as the highest aspiration of the common people. Whereas it is essential, if a man is not to be compelled to have recourse, as a last resort, to rebellion against tyranny and oppression, that human rights should be protected by the rule of law. What this is saying is that you are born with inherent dignity. You're not inferior. You have equal and inalienable rights as a member of the human family, and this is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. Then it goes on to say, disregard and contempt for human rights have resulted in barbarous acts, which have outraged mankind's conscience, and a world needs to be created in which human beings can enjoy freedom of speech and beliefs, and freedom from fear and want. This has been proclaimed as the highest wish of common people. It is essential that these are implemented, otherwise people will be compelled as a last resort to rebellion against tyranny, oppression, and human rights should be protected by the rule of law. That is what this first part means. Whereas it is essential to promote the development of friendly relations between nations, whereas the peoples of the United Nations have in the Charter reaffirmed their faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, and in the equal rights of men and women, and have determined to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom. This part is saying that it's essential to promote friendliness between the nations, and that the people whose countries have given them human rights and reaffirmed their faith in fundamental human rights and the dignity and worth of the human person are determined to promote social progress and better standards of life in larger freedom. So, to recap, it's essential to promote friendly relations, support fundamental human rights and the dignity and worth of the human person, equal rights for men and women, and to be determined as a group of friendly nations to move forward for better standards of life in larger freedom. Now, America is up there with Saudi Arabia and Somalia in not giving its citizens human rights, and somehow they manage to lead the free world, start wars and protect everybody else's rights, but they have not afforded their citizens human rights yet. Whereas member states have pledged themselves to achieve, in cooperation with the United Nations, the promotion of universal respect for and observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms. That's self-explanatory. The member states have pledged themselves, with cooperation with the United Nations, meaning they are held accountable. The United Nations can make suggestions, can deploy troops, so they cooperate with the United Nations for the promotion of universal respect, regardless of whether you have arms, legs, born female, born male, sexual orientation, religion, skin colour, promotion of universal respect, observance of human rights and fundamental freedoms. Those fundamental freedoms are laid out in the Human Rights Charter. Whereas a common understanding of these rights and freedoms is of the greatest importance for the full realization of this pledge. Now, therefore, the General Assembly proclaims this Universal Declaration of Human Rights as a common standard of achievement for all peoples and all nations, to the end that every individual and every organ of society, keeping this declaration constantly in mind, shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms, and by progressive measures, national and international, to secure their universal and effective recognition and observance, both among the peoples of the member states themselves and among the peoples of territories under their jurisdiction. Now, this is something that the Human Race Clothing Company wants to stand for, and that is that human rights are taught to all children in elementary school, because they are the future, and we are one race, we are the human race, and it's important that the children know there is such a thing as human rights. It's hard enough to navigate in social situations if you're a minority, if you haven't got enough money to wear the latest clothes. It's enough for children to worry about and navigate growing up. But if they are taught their worth and human rights, they can start to build a perspective early on in life. It's not my fault I was born black or white. This is my religion, and I have the right to my religion. If there were human rights, my shoes wouldn't have holes in them. I'd be able to afford breakfast. We wouldn't be living in a car. Whatever it is, it's important that children can frame society within human rights. That is a society that is functioning in its best capacity, rather than leaving that for a pastor or an extremist to come and tell them that, oh, there's this utopia, or a white supremacist to explain to them what we need to do is wipe out every other race. I mean, instead of their fertile imagination being left open to all of this divisiveness and feelings of being not worthy, to grow up to be just a victim of circumstance, they should be taught these articles so they can frame what they're seeing and measure their life and their society up against it, so they know where they're heading and understand they are human beings and part of the human family. Now, getting back to this article, it says common understanding, meaning common understanding. Everybody should understand this as much as they understand that, I don't know, how to find their program in a magazine, their sport. Whereas a common understanding of these rights and freedom is of the greatest importance for the full realization of this pledge. People need to be educated. Human rights is a common standard of achievement for all peoples and nations. Keeping this declaration constantly in mind, shall strive by teaching and education to promote respect for these rights and freedoms, both among the people of the member states themselves and among the people of territories under their jurisdiction. And it's, according to this part and the articles themselves, that I will be petitioning. Once I've got enough of a following, I'll be doing petitions for it to be taught to children in schools, for the KKK to be banned, and for USA to implement it. Now here we move on to Article 1. Article 1. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Now, Article 1 is stating that we're all born free. So, working 2 jobs, getting a few hours sleep for less than a minimum wage is hardly free. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. You are endowed with reason and conscience. So eugenics is out the window. No person is better than another person based on the colour of their skin. One person is not more moral than another person for some reason. Because they're a long line of this religion and there are a long line of atheists or even Satanists, it doesn't mean that one human being has got more reasoning and conscience than the next. This states that we're all endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. So there is the word and there is the spirit that you do it in. And the beautiful thing about human rights is that it doesn't just say words where you can dance around and get behind it and come with a different spirit to the letter or the words. It first of all talks about the spirit you should enter into it in. That's not negotiable. Article 2. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without distinction of any kind, such as race, colour, sex, language, religion, politic, or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether it be independent trust, non-self-governing, or under any limitation of sovereignty. Okay, so everybody is entitled to the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration without distinction, and no distinction is made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, international status of the country or territory. So we all have these rights regardless of the country that we were born in. We all have these rights just for being born. Now, when a country doesn't afford its citizens human rights, it doesn't mean you don't have human rights. It just means that your country hasn't decided to uphold your human rights. They're there lingering in the background, but your country has not decided it will uphold them. Because once they decide they will uphold them and sign those treaties and everything, then they can be held accountable for not playing their part. So this part is saying that everybody is entitled to them. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration. So it's a bit tricky. It's like saying it's an idea, it's out there, you are entitled to it, but regardless of your country, you are entitled to it. You can draw to the UN's attention, you can say, as a human being, I want to draw police brutality to the UN's attention. And I think it has been brought to their attention. I think they have condemned it. You can do that as a human being and say it's your human right. But you couldn't take your country to court about it. You couldn't take your country to court about it if they haven't. Well, I suppose you could, but if they haven't agreed to give you human rights, then they'll have a lot of red tape to stop you in your tracks. I suppose it depends on how great the degree of the crime was. I mean, if it's your human right that nobody steps on your toes, I doubt you'd be able to take them to court for that. But if they tested syphilis in your town just on the black men who were aged between 20 and 40, killing them and deforming a whole generation of children, then something severe as that you probably could bring before the UN. Article 3. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of person. That's self-explanatory, so I'll just move on to Article 4. No one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. That again is self-explanatory, so I'll move on to Article 5. Article 5. No one shall be subjected to torture or to cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. That's self-explanatory. Inhumane or degrading treatment. No inhumane or degrading treatment or punishments. This is, of course, more aimed to when a subject is in your care, like a prison or something. But fact is, no human being should suffer inhumane or degrading treatment. On to Article 6. Article 6. Everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Everyone has the right to recognition everywhere as a person before the law. Again, self-explanatory. Yeah. On to Article 7. Article 7. All are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. All are entitled to equal protection against any discrimination in violation of this declaration and against any incitement to such discrimination. Clearly, the KKK, which has not been deemed a terrorist organisation, disbanded, and if you're joined to it, it's a hate crime and you could go to prison. So that hasn't happened, and that is in direct defiance of Article 7, which are citizens of the United States who are human beings, who should in theory have this Article 7 right upheld, equal before the law, entitled without any discrimination to equal protection against discrimination in violence of this declaration and against any incitement. You have President Trump saying that they are very fine people, but they are inciting discrimination. That's a direct violation of Article 7. What a mess. There's nothing to discuss. We don't need personalities. We don't need pastors. We don't need personalities. We don't need imams. We don't need all the hype and the furore and hoo-ha. You just need people to understand it's in direct violation of Article 7 and you are human beings, and call for it. Ask the UN to take action. Stop all this entertainment. Moving on to Article 8. Article 8. Everyone has a right to an effective remedy by the competent national tribunals for acts violating the fundamental rights granted him by Constitution or by law. So there should be a court to go to when you're not happy about that court's decision, to remedy whatever's gone wrong in your human rights. Everyone has the right to an effective remedy by the competent national tribunals for acts violating the fundamental rights granted him by the Constitution or by law. So if you're in some way behind God's back town where the judge just rules this and that and there's no peers that can really represent you and you feel like there's a mistrial, you should have a national tribunal. Somewhere else to go. Moving on to Article 9. Article 9. No one should be subjected to arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile. This means you should not be just arrested for no reason. You shouldn't. No one should. No one should be subjected to it. Arbitrary arrests, detention, or exile. So when Trump wants to throw immigrants out of the country, the fact is they shouldn't be subject to arbitrary. Arbitrary means like you don't look into the person's personal situation. It's just like, oh, you've all got red trainers on, and we arrest people with red trainers. It doesn't matter if you had those red trainers for 1 minute or 10 years. We're not going to discriminate on the stink of the trainers. Nope, that's not the reason. It doesn't matter if they stink. It doesn't matter if they're new. I don't care if you lace them up crisscrossed or straight. This is arbitrary. It's just because you've got red trainers, and you will go to the right and all the people with the blue trainers will go to the left. That's arbitrary. It doesn't look into the personal circumstances. It's just one blanket thing, and nobody should be subjected to that, because we all have our own personal circumstances, reasons for, needs, support systems. Not all immigrants are the same. Not all immigrants are criminals. Not all immigrants are innocent. Not all immigrants have even seen their homeland. So arbitrary arrest, detention, or exile doesn't work. And it's in violation of Article 9. Moving on to Article 10. Article 10. Everyone is entitled in full equality to a fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal in the determination of his rights and obligations and of any criminal charge against him. I already touched on this. You're entitled to full equality to fair and public hearing by an independent and impartial tribunal. I can hardly see how that can happen when the KKK is not a banned organisation. You will need for at least 100 years for that independent and impartial tribunal to be a cabinet with other friendly nations who have got a proven track record of human rights. So, for example, fair and public hearing in an independent and impartial tribunal. So that fair and independent tribunal couldn't just be in the United States, because we know that there is the KKK and police are getting away with killing people, and that's going to take some time to die out. A fair one would be a group of member nations who have got low crime rates, a good standing with their human rights, have provided universal health care, free schooling, college. These kind of countries grouped together with America, and you could go to that group and say, I want a fair and public hearing about this judgment. America cannot be just left to govern itself. And even if it did take on human rights, it would still need to be held accountable, because its problems are not just going away. And it's become entertainment, frankly. People are hooked on their pain. People are hooked on the drama. On to Article 11. Article 11, 1. Everyone charged with a penal offence has the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, according to law, in a public trial at which he has had all the guarantees necessary for his defence. No one should be held guilty of any penal offence on account of any act or omission which did not constitute a penal offence under national or international law at the time when it was committed, nor shall a heavier penalty be imposed than the one that was applicable at the time the penal offence was committed. Again, that's self-explanatory. The right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. reporting needs to be monitored, and the media needs to be careful what they say, because they can sway people's opinions. I know over here in England, they don't list, they don't even list kind of things that a person has done or be found guilty of. They would just kind of report the crime, like give a press conference, say this has happened, and that's it. You wouldn't really hear about their ticket violation and they did this and they did that before the trial has even started, because it could affect the outcome. Now you see in America the victims are being treated like criminals, and the criminals are getting away with it. So I'm not going to talk about this anymore, because Article 11 is that you have the right to be presumed innocent until you're proven guilty. And you should be proven guilty. When you are proven guilty, you should be found guilty, which is so obvious it wouldn't even be here, because things have gone too far. Okay, no one should be held guilty for an offence on account of an omission which did not constitute a penal offence. So, for example, if you see a young lady who was... nobody should be held, like broken into their house with no warrant and held because... I don't know how to say... because they didn't show their driver's license as they were walking to their car. It wasn't an offence to not show your driver's license just walking towards your car, just walking down the street. It's not an offence to not show your ID at a store or at a restaurant. So that is... nobody should be held guilty. So what I'm trying to say is that afterwards they can't be held guilty because they didn't... oh, now I'm arresting you because you didn't get out your ID. But it wasn't an offence to not get out your ID. And even if a law was brought in that you need to show any Tom, Dick or Harry your ID at a restaurant, even if a law came in whilst that Tom, Dick or Harry just randomly came up to you and said, can I see your ID? Or the police did. And they had no right to question you like that in that environment. Then if there was a law suddenly brought in, you shouldn't go to prison for it, because it wasn't a crime at the time. So that's what that's all about. On to Article 12. Article 12. No one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home or correspondence, nor to attacks upon his honour and reputation. Everyone has the right to be to the protection of the law against such interference or attacks. Now that goes back to what I was just saying now. You should not be interfered with your privacy, your family, your home or your correspondence. You have the right to live your life. And everyone has the right to be protected against such interference or attacks, which is what I said before. People's privacy, family, home, correspondence can all be blown up in the attempt to make the victim look like the criminal. But it's against Article 12, and I'll move on to Article 13. Article 13. Number 1. Everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. Number 2. Everyone has the right to leave any country, including his own, and to return to his country. You know, there are people who are being held as political prisoners in their own house for 10 years and more than that, just because they spoke out against the government. That's against Article 13. Moving on to Article 14. Article 14, Part 1. Everyone has the right to seek and to enjoy in other countries asylum from protection. Part 2. This right may not be invoked in the case of prosecutions generally arising from non-political crimes or from acts contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. So everyone has the right to seek and enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution. Everyone. Everyone. They don't have to be doctors. They don't have to be of use to your country. But they couldn't be, it says here, this is not to be invoked in cases of people who are being prosecuted from non-political crimes. So if they're being prosecuted for a political crime, so for example they're calling for human rights in their country, then yeah, they should be able to seek asylum. But if they've just chopped somebody up into 1,000 pieces and thrown their body to the wind, then no, they shouldn't be seeking asylum. If they're criminals, no, they should not be seeking asylum, because that is contrary to the purpose and principles. But going back to who should seek asylum, they don't have to be a benefit to your country. They don't have to speak your language. They don't have to understand your culture. If they're going through something, they have the right to run, and they have the right to ask other countries to take them in. End of story. It's their right. It's their right to seek asylum. I feel like sometimes if you're black and you live in America, you could seek asylum because America is just terrorizing black people. I think that's a case you could win. But Europe is not quite as entertaining as USA. It's not so big, it's not so loud. It's peaceful. But it's not entertaining, big and loud and robust. And it hasn't got all of this craziness. I hope it comes to an end. Article 15. Article 15. Article 15, Part 1. Everyone has the right to a nationality. Part 2. No one shall be of his arbitrarily deprived nationality nor denied the right to change his nationality. Okay. Everyone has the right to say they belong to somewhere. Nobody should be arbitrarily deprived of their nationality, like I said before. All those with red sneakers, get out. You shouldn't be arbitrarily deprived. It should be looked into. There should be a process to gain your nationality and a process to lose it. Not just all rounded up because some guy feels like it for another country. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of their nationality, or even you couldn't just go to a country, give everybody syphilis, kill them, and then say, now you'll be known as, you were known as this before, but now you're going to be known as Americans. You can't do that. You can't just deprive people of their nationality, and you can't take away from somebody their right to change their nationality. So a child that is born in a country and has grown up in a country should have some recourse to have the right to a nationality. So there should be some framework. You've lived here for 11 years of your life, never seen your country of birth, so you get citizenship. I don't understand why this is all so hazy, why America does not give its citizens human rights. And even if I do draw the logical conclusions, I don't understand why nobody's talking about human rights, why there are so much personalities, and why this issue is just not sorted. But anyway, there you go. Article 16 is next. Article 16, Part 1. Men and women of full age without any limitation due to race, nationality or religion have the right to marry and to found a family. They are entitled to equal rights as to marriage, during marriage and at its dissolution. Marriage shall be entered into only with the free and full consent of the intending spouses. 3. The family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. Article 16 is basically saying that people have the right, without any limitation. It doesn't matter how poor they are, doesn't matter how clean their teeth are, doesn't matter how intelligent they are, doesn't matter how much they earn, doesn't matter how many people like them, how many people dislike them. It doesn't even matter if they're a scourge on society. They have the right, without any limitation, to marry, found a family. They're entitled to equal rights in their marriage, and during its dissolution. So properties will be equally shared out, monies equally during and after its dissolution. For example, that was money, for example. 2, marriage shall be entered in with the free and full consent of the intending spouses. Now, you can't be 12 or 14 and give free and full consent to marrying somebody. I'm pretty sure you don't know what you're doing. So underage marriage is against Article 16. And Part 3, the family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state. Now, rather than look down your nose at the next family, laugh at them, oh, look at them, they've got 15 children and they can't even feed them, what are they doing? They need to stop effing. Rather than all of this attitude and points of views and discrimination that keeps one person feeling better than other, when in reality the people who are selling you your medication and running your country don't care about any of you. Rather than having this system where people are shamed into being good people, so by their children designer stuff, have 1 or 2 children or none at all, whatever it takes to keep people from saying this about you. Or if you fall upon hard times, you could be pretty sure when you marry somebody that you're going to live the rest of your life with this person, decide you're going to be a housewife, nothing works out, and then you're left on welfare with, say, 5 children. Now you're just a statistic. It doesn't matter if you made good or bad choices. You may not even have education because you stopped at high school or college to have those children. You're just going to be another statistic. Everyone's going to say, well, you should have gone to school. You're going to have all this tremendous guilt and feeling like your life has passed you by. The society's going to treat you like crap and you're going to have to go and get welfare. You're endlessly going to be explaining your situation when you did the best you could with what you could and made decisions that you never thought that your husband would just die and leave you. Well, all of this backwards and forwards that America entertains itself with, people's mistakes, people's intelligence. Oh, this one is low intelligence, this one is high intelligence, this person's child, look at their, oh, they're so beautiful, they're so pretty, oh, they're so dirty, they're so ratchet. All of this extreme polarization and looking down on each other is an arrogance and a way of America not feeling like they need to say we need human rights, because it's all about being smart, it's all about getting ahead, it's always about having foresight, taking the opportunities and grabbing the bull by the horns and doing what you need to do. It's all about competition and being smart. It's not about, you have the fundamental right to start a family at the right age, and the society and the state should protect you. You see, when you judge people like this, you have areas with food deserts. You have celebrities who look the same, opening up spas and hotels, while the people who look like them are living in food deserts. Why? Because this society doesn't believe that the family is a natural and fundamental group unit of society. If they did believe that the family was a natural and fundamental group unit of society, they would do their best to uplift every family, instead of running away from them, calling it the hood and laughing at them. It's really sick when attitudes and looking down your nose at people is used to blind you from human rights that would help all of you, because you can all fall on hard times, you can all make wrong decisions, you can all have a mental breakdown, rich or poor. The family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled, yes, entitled, not a full sense of entitlement, is entitled to protection by society and the state. A country needs to foster this attitude towards families. I'll repeat that for the last time. The family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and state. Your country cannot hike up your medication by 700%, so that family faces homelessness, GoFundMe campaigns to get medication. The family is a natural and fundamental group unit. I cannot emphasize enough that, but I will move on to Article 17. Article 17, Part 1. Everyone has the right to own property alone as well as in association with others. Part 2. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his property. That means that nobody who just falls in the way of an oil pipeline or a motorway is just deprived of their property because there's now a contract to build a pipeline through this community. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of their property. Can't do it. Article 18. Article 18. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom either alone or in a community with others, and in public or private to manifest his religion or belief in teaching, practice, worship and observance. So you have some countries, for example, Saudi Arabia or Islamic countries, where you cannot change your religion. It's a punishable offence. This article is about a person having the right to change their religion. But on a lighter note, if you were from some community, for all intents and purposes to the rest of America or the rest of the country you were in seemed like a cult, you know, it's your human right to get help to be integrated back into society when leaving that religion. So, in theory, if you run away from a cult or a state, say, I don't know, if they're Amish or something, you could go to another place and say to that place, I'm being prevented from my beliefs and I need help with this and I need help with that, and you should get the help that you need as a vulnerable person with human rights. You shouldn't just run away and be picked up by a pimp and a trafficker and just fall into the underbelly of society. See, if children knew their rights, people knew. Article 19. Article 19. Everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. This means if my country has human rights and North Korea does not, we all have the right to express our opinions and express ourselves regardless of those frontiers. So if that country is, so say if it was Saudi Arabia and they were against Christianity or converting to Christianity, it's still my right to spread my ideas regardless of their frontiers. And that's my human right. So they couldn't demand that I was shipped over there and prosecuted according to their laws. But also, if you were within Saudi Arabia, you could call upon this right being withheld from you to seek asylum. So all these rights are not just something for member states. All the peoples and the countries that do not have human rights, they can cite the absence of human rights as their reason for wanting to leave their country or get help in those countries that do have human rights. Going on to Article 20. Article 20. Everyone has the right of freedom of personal assembly. Article 20. Everyone has the right to freedom of peaceful assembly and association. Part 2. No one may be compelled to belong to an association. So, everyone has the right to peacefully assemble and to be a part of an association. So, if you wanted to start an association for, I don't know if they call them battered housewives or do they call it victims of domestic violence. If you wanted to peacefully assemble and associate, you have the right to do that. So long as it's not on private property and nobody can tell you, no, move on. You can't be a part of this association because you'll lose your job or something like that. And no one should be compelled to join an association. So you shouldn't be compelled to join an association for some sort of benefit or something that is already your human right. You shouldn't feel compelled. Yeah. So, Article 20. Actually, before I move on, it's really obvious, but no, if you're traumatized and you think that the KKK could just pull up Article 20 in violation of all the other articles and the spirit of the articles, no. This isn't a trick. This isn't a game. You can't pull this up and be part of clearly of a terrorist organisation and say, well, according to Article 20, you could never do that. You just couldn't. This is not games. This isn't politics. This is human rights as part of the human family. And this is what needs to be spread awareness of. It's not politics. Everybody should be as comfortable with saying, I demand my human rights. I want human rights. As much as they say, oh, I pay my taxes. I want free healthcare. Or Black Lives Matter. All these things that are personal and people feel passionate about, they should feel passionate about human rights. Because it's not a trick. It's not something... I mean, you should be aware of it. You should understand it. But it's not just some utopia far out there. for somebody else or for somebody else to interpret. It's something every human being who already lives on this planet, is the best deal you're going to get. It's the best deal you're going to get. And it can only get better if you build upon this. So no, you couldn't use Article 20 for being a member of the KKK. Moving on to Article 21. Article 21, Part 1. Everyone has the right to take part in the government of his country directly or through freely chosen representatives. Part 2. Everyone has the right to equal access to public service in his country. Number 3. The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. This will shall be expressed in periodic and genuine elections, which shall be by universal and equal suffrage, and shall be held by secret vote or by equivalent free voting procedures. Part 1. Everyone has the right to take part in the government of their country directly or through chosen representatives. Everyone has the right. Every person. Every person. Every person, not just those who have applied for a driver's license, not just those who hold a passport. If they're renting, they must have some form of ID, a bank account. You know, everybody has the right to partake. And they don't need, it's just so obvious. Everyone has a right. Everyone has the right to equal access to public service. Public services, schools, doctors, hospitals. Everyone has the right to equal access to public services. Yeah, public services. Public services to the doctors. It's not all privatized. It's the government. It's run by the government. It's centralized. Unless you pay for private schools, private hospital care and private doctors, it's a public service and everyone has the right to it. Again, there's this thing of personalities and taking it one step at a time because, I'm good on this. I've got a job. I've only had one child that I could afford. I'm not handicapped. I'm not mentally deficient. I'm not running around here dirty. I'm not having children out of wedlock. So I just need my healthcare to be affordable. I'm not going to get comfortable with calling for human rights. I don't need to be so drastic. I'm taking care of me. I don't live paycheck to paycheck. And in fact, the statistics show that most people will come up with these statements, give or take, with a bit of argument or whatever for the mistakes they've made. But the fact is, most Americans haven't got more than, Most Americans haven't got more than, $100 spare. So everybody's living paycheck to paycheck and rinsing their credit. And then they'll prop themselves up and the whole environment will be like, we just need this healthcare, and out of the goodness of my soul, I'm going to mention that person over there who's got cancer and they can't afford their treatment. But I just need my healthcare bill to be down. I'm good, I'm this, I'm that, because I pay my taxes and I do this and I do that, and I don't mind this and I don't mind that. No, you need human rights. America is treating you all like scum. And most of you are living paycheck to paycheck. So there's no need to pretend. It's a public service and everybody needs equal access. Yep. Even the person who overdoses in the exit, and even the woman who has way too many children and she's not married, is probably going to die of AIDS next year. she still needs access to public services. The will of the people shall be the basis of the authority of government. Well, there are people protesting the will of this government, and they're not being heard. There are people who will swear he doesn't represent America. And yet others who swear it's always been like this, but it just didn't show. It's a big place. But the will of the people is the basis of the authority of government. Not just one slick talking billionaire who, not one person, shouldn't be in the control of one person. So Article 21 is about the decimation of power, about the power that each individual holds through their freely chosen representatives, and about the voting procedure and access to public services. Fundamental human rights. Article 22. Everyone as a member of society has the right to social security and is entitled to realization through national effort and international cooperation, and in accordance with the organisation and resources of each state, of the economic, social and cultural rights indispensable for his dignity and the free development of his personality. Now, if you do not live in a country with human rights, this will seem like, well, you can't talk about that. You can't just say everyone should have this. It's too much to ask. But believe me, I live in the United Kingdom, and after a good few years, 10, 20, I don't know, years of practicing human rights and protecting human rights, I can tell you, every member of this society has the right to social security. Homelessness is not... Homeless on the street, most of those people in England have chosen to be that way. There are charities that will help you even when you fall through the net, and it doesn't matter how many times. If you're an addict, you will get free help, free rehabilitation, and to cut a long story short, homeless people have kind of chosen that way of life. Sometimes, yes, there is a lot of red tape to get through, but then there are citizen advice bureaus and people who are paid. So if your reading and writing is not too good, or if you really don't even care for yourself that much, you can meet with them every morning and they will do what they have to do. There are shelters, national effort and international cooperation in accordance with the organisation and resources of each state and of the economic, social and cultural rights indispensable. Right. The economic, social and cultural rights indispensable. This means if you live in a country with human rights, your social, cultural rights and cultural rights are indispensable for your dignity. Indispensable. That's why you'll see there is such a hoo-ha backwards and forwards. For example, in France, trying to ban women from covering their faces in public because they have human rights and their cultural rights are seen as indispensable for their dignity. See, they have the right to practice their religion. And on the other hand, the government will want to keep people safe. They won't want to see... They will have proof of female mutilation, circumcision, practices of keeping back the women from education, not being a part of society. They'll have proof of all of these things going down, but it will be this big tug of war to attack their culture. So your social and cultural rights are indispensable for your dignity. So in the same vein, if you wanted to shave the middle of your head, wear 2 odd shoes, and say it is your religion and demand that people take you seriously, well, in a country with human rights, they'd have to do just that. For the free development of your personality. Now, there's no need to get into your feelings. Most people haven't got a thick enough skin to shave their hair down the middle, wear 2 odd shoes, and demand, according to human rights, for the sake of attention, to live that way. First of all, how would they pay their bills? Because no job is going to accept them dressed like that. So, people need money. People need to feel accepted. People need to integrate into society. So, free development of your personality is not something that is going to get out of hand unless you're already a billionaire and don't depend on anybody. Then you could have human rights anyhow. You could have human rights anyhow. You could have more than human rights. So, my example of that person who shaves their head down the middle and is completely absurd, going about doing that, well, I wouldn't put my money on them really succeeding, because unless they were getting paid for that, that kind of insanity is just going to probably end them up in hospital. And it's a good thing too that in countries where there are human rights, when somebody does get mentally ill, shave the middle of their hair, walk down the streets in 2 odd shoes, demanding this and that right, and misconstruing everything. It's a great thing that in the countries with human rights, their mental health is taken seriously. They can be put into a hospital, they will be showered, they'll have clean clothes, they'll get the medication they need, the care they need, a care plan with their family, no cost, nothing. They will get the help they need based on the basis of, well, of all of us needing to be safe for one, and for 2, they're a human, and their health matters are just as much a problem for everybody else. I've been to Hollywood, and Hollywood is worse. I've been to Hollywood, and I grew up in Chelsea, and Chelsea is like 1,000,000 times better than Hollywood. Hollywood is, there's urine, it stinks of urine, there are homeless people everywhere. And I cannot believe this place that churns out all these films, that is such a tourist attraction, such a big deal, is riddled with homelessness and urine on the streets. It's disgusting. I haven't even seen a part of London that is so run down as LA. Well, even Hollywood. It's just, that strip is just disgusting. And see, this is what happens when you spend your time looking down on people, when the family is not the fundamental foundation of society. When people don't matter, that person who doesn't matter is going to pee all over your streets. Who wants to live like that? Moving on to Article 23. Article 23, Part 1. Everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment, to just and favourable conditions of work, and to protection against unemployment. Part 2. Everyone without any discrimination has the right to equal pay for equal work. Part 3. Everyone who works has the right to just and favourable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family an existence worthy of human dignity. and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. Part 4. Everyone has the right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of his interests. Okay, this is going on from what I was just talking about. Everyone has the right to work, to free choice of employment. So, again, going back to America, they'll have people in prison working for, I don't know, what is it, $1 an hour or less than $1. Probably working for a hot meal, probably working for a shower or a bit of soap, who knows. But when they come out, they'll be fighting fires, they'll be building things, they'll be doing things. When they're inside, they come out, they're unqualified, and I mean, they've just been fighting fires as prisoners, but they come out unqualified and nobody wants to employ them, and all that work experience goes down the drain. Everyone has the right to work. The right to work. Free choice to employment. Now, free choice to employment means, for example, no, exactly. In fact, I'm not even going to bother giving that example. It'll probably do the brains in of all you people out there who believe you have to work your fingers to the bone. You'll probably just shut off if I start to speak about tax credit system and universal credits, and when they make the tax credit system such a way that they will help you to pay your rent, but then they put people in accommodation that is too expensive but pay their rent. So when they work, it becomes actually in people's own interests to not work too many hours because their rent would not get paid. Things like that can happen in countries where there are human rights, and it can be used, like the universal credits can be used to stimulate the economy, no doubt, to pay rent to unscrupulous landlords. These are things, but overall, the person has a free choice to employment, meaning that they don't have to take a job, that if they work 40 hours, they're going to be less well off than if they worked 20 hours. And including the childcare and everything, because the family is the foundation. So you need just and favourable conditions to work and protection against unemployment. That's what I was just talking about, just and favourable conditions. A single father, a single mother, a widowed man, a widowed woman shouldn't be in unjust and unfavourable conditions. If they had a spouse at home who used to look after the child and that person has died and they have to travel for 2 hours to get to work, and they need to leave their child in childcare and pay, so that's 4 hours of travel and I don't know, $90 a day and all this kind of thing, then it should be their right to give notice or to look for another job, or to just go unemployed. Just say, I can't do this. They physically can't do this. Somebody's just died. They can't keep travelling 2 hours there. They need to give their notice. They need to leave the job. They need to look for another job. You know, there are people who are like, I can't leave my job. I can't leave my job no matter what. They've got God knows who at home with their children. You know, I don't know, children being raised by Xboxes or friends, or paying less money for less quality care for their children. They have to work, no choice about it. No protection against unemployment. Somebody's just died, it doesn't matter, get back to work. This job doesn't give you sick leave. And even if you was sick, who's going to pay for your rent? No time to mourn. No protection against unemployment. Everyone without any discrimination has a right to equal pay for equal work. So if you're a man and you're a woman doing a security job, you should get the same pay for the same work. Okay, this part, I've already covered it with the first one. Everyone who works has the right to just and favourable remuneration, ensuring for himself and his family an existence worthy of human dignity and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. So basically, an existence worthy of human dignity. An existence worthy of human dignity. And in the beginning, it didn't say that it is afforded to all people equally, because contrary to popular belief that if people were taken care of, if they became employed or given decent housing, contrary to popular belief that they will sit on their butts and do nothing, if there's no hindrance, people want what is best for themselves and best for their children. If the opportunities are there, they will go for it. They won't just it's not what people do. And even if the first generation, you know, who was still smoking from all of this, decided to be bums because they'd worked 2 jobs and decided they were going to be bums and just try to defraud the system in some way, it doesn't mean their children will grow up like them. When their children go to school and have a hot meal, and the teachers who teach them with dignity and respect and teach them human rights and make them feel a part of this society and nourish their personality, no child wants to grow up being, I don't know, the scourge of society. It's just something that happens. So people can stop that right now. People wouldn't choose to be the scourge of society. It just doesn't happen. Nobody chooses to say, oh, you know, I want to be the most hated. I want everyone to hate me. I want everyone to be disgusted. I want everywhere I go that people turn up their nose at me. I want to live in a way where I'm restricted to my block and alcohol just numbs my pain. Go and find me a child who says that's how I want to grow up. It doesn't happen. Life does that to them, so recognize that and stop treating people like the consequences of their own choices is who they fundamentally are. I'm pretty sure they tried to integrate at one point. I'm pretty sure they tried their best with their limited intelligence, yellow teeth or whatever. I'm pretty sure they tried to integrate. They made the best choices at one point, and the society came along and did what it did, and things took their toll. So, an existence worthy of human dignity and supplemented, if necessary, by other means of social protection. Everyone has a right to form and to join trade unions for the protection of their interests. So, for example, you might join a job where they have 0 hours contract, where they can just fire you tomorrow. They call you up and say whether you can come in or not. You could form a trade union if your country had human rights. If your country doesn't have human rights, they may just say, well, if you join this union, we won't call you, you won't be needing to come back tomorrow. They can just fire you like that. So, it's your right to protect your interests and gather to do that. Article 24. Everyone has the right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. Again, everyone has the right to rest and leisure. So it's a right to get some rest on the weekend, like to have a cap of just 40 hours. It's your right. That means the wages have got to be raised, or you've got to get some subsidy on your rent, or all of your rent paid, according to what the state can afford, because everyone has the right to rest and leisure. Nobody should be working 7 days a week, 2 jobs, you know, children, out of state, whatever, walking 20 miles. You have the right to rest and leisure. So the workforce has got to adjust accordingly in its contract. The government has got to adjust has got to adjust accordingly in its subsidies. It's all got to be overhauled, putting the human being in the centre of it. No finger blaming, no pointing, no waiting for people to drop down dead, working 2 jobs and only sleeping 6 hours. No. No. You're not going to work hard and have 6 hours free time in the day, and somebody's going to notice you and your life is going to turn around. Notice what a great comedian you are, what a great singer you are, or you're just such a lovely person, you're going to get promoted. It's not going to happen. It's most likely you're going to drop down dead or get arthritis from clicking your fingers on the keyboard too much, or get some kind of back pain that just won't go away, and then what? Crash your car because you're too tired. No, it doesn't all pay off. It's not great, it's not wonderful, it doesn't work. It gives you illnesses, it makes you ill, it stresses you out, it makes you overweight. Then you're going to need to take medication with a whole bunch of side effects that the price can be hiked 700 times. It is most likely you will develop diabetes or cancer. So, again, everyone has the right to rest and leisure, including reasonable limitation of working hours and periodic holidays with pay. There's no gold stars for deteriorating your health and stressing yourself out. It's nothing short about car payments that take all of car payments that take all of your wages, and gas, and you're spending so much of your wages on gas just to get to work, and your uniform, and this is also dignified. No, it is not dignified. It's not. Your employer and the state needs to do something that works for you, because you're a human being and you're part of the family. And you see, this thing of breaking away from the human family and having your little waste of time identity that serves you today but won't serve you tomorrow is nonsense. You need to first have human rights, and anything you build upon that would work. Because we're still a society. We're still beside each other. Muslims, Christians, black, white, Jewish, Christians, male, female, young, old, mentally ill, healthy, depressed, not depressed, unhealthy, healthy, disabled, able-bodied, transgender, homosexual, straight, sick, diseased, happy, sad. We're all together. We're still living side by side. We're all living side by side in a society. And in order for any one of those groups to move forward, they need to have human rights. In order for 2 of them to move forward, they need to have human rights. In order for them all to move forward in their chosen identities, they still need to have human rights. Because otherwise, how are they going to interact with each other? If everybody called for their own isolation and only hired and dealt with and talked to and interacted with their own group, their own demographic or their own identity, that's not going to work. They're still going to find themselves on the other side of town, where they're not accepted and ridiculed for whatever reason. They're still going to find themselves on the other side of the health system, where they have medication they cannot afford. They'll find themselves healthy or sick or this or that. So if you just open your eyes and look around and see you're living in a society, you would understand you all need human rights. Not so one group can get ahead more, not because one is falling behind. For you to all exist safely alongside each other, you need human rights. It's unquestionable. It's clear. Human rights before entertainment, human rights before personalities, human rights before all of the excitement from listening to people's speeches and all the eloquence and the poetry and the drama and even the murder and the suspense and the anticipation and the court cases and the distrust. Human race before all of that. Human rights before all of that. Then after that, if you are strange enough to try and navigate your way through that system, to have an individuality that hurts other people, you're just going to find yourself in prison. It's that simple. Article 25. 1. Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing and medical care and necessary social services, and the right to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. Motherhood and childhood are entitled to special care and assistance. All children, whether born in or out of wedlock, shall enjoy the same social protection. I think Article 25, I think I've touched upon it with the last one and a lot of the others, so I'll move on to Article 26. Article 26. Part 1. Everyone has the right to education. Education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Elementary education shall be compulsory. Technical and professional education shall be made generally available, and higher education shall be equally accessible to all on the basis of merit. 2. Education shall be directed to the full development of the human personality and to the strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. It shall promote understanding, tolerance, and friendship among all nations, racial or religious groups, and shall further the activities of the United Nations for the maintenance of peace. Part 3. Parents have a prior right to choose the kind of education that shall be given to their children. Okay, I'm just going to jump to Part 3 because it goes before Part 1 and Part 2. Part 3. Parents have the right to choose whether they're going to educate their children at home or whether at school. Okay. Everyone has the right to education. Education shall be free, at least in the elementary and fundamental stages. Higher education shall be equally accessible on the basis of merit. Meaning, if you get the grades, you should get into the school. Not by price. Higher education. Now, this is what education should be directed towards. Full development of the human personality. Okay, strengthening of respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms, promote understanding, tolerance, friendship among all nations, i.e. races, racial or religious groups. Now, this is what education should be directed towards. We have grown adults arguing about flags, swearing their heads off. The President of the United States has the audacity to call children of colour mothers bitches. Where is the understanding, tolerance, friendship amongst nations, maintenance of peace, respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms in that statement? The school should be teaching this. So basically, Human Race Clothing Company wants to petition to get the KKK banned as a terrorist organisation, Meaning any person who is in this group or try to assemble under this name or any other group name, if anybody tries to reassemble it, they can go to prison, terrorist offence, funds seized. Any of these groups, their funds are seized. Does this stop? No, banned. No more KKK. The Human Race Clothing Company wants children to be taught human rights. Why? Because you wouldn't have people like Trump. You wouldn't have adults like Trump, grown adults. And you wouldn't have all these people who think like him. And all other sections of society that are, that are against respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms. All these other fractions of society that do not promote understanding, tolerance, friendship amongst the nation's racial and religious groups. All of these grown adults are not educated on human rights and the human family. If you can catch children while they are young and teach them these things, they will grow up to be better adults. A few generations of every school teaching children human rights, and this will figure itself out. Once you know you are a dignified human being, the sky's the limit. The sky is not the limit. There is no limit. Article 26, I think, is all the proof you need that this needs to be taught to children in primary schools. Primary, we call it here in England, primary schools. In America, you call it elementary. That's our 3-point plan. This is an idea. This isn't about clothing. And in fact, the clothing, at the moment, as I'm starting out, it needs to be made piece by piece, and it's pretty expensive. But this is an idea. I think the idea of the human race, it is an idea that will naturally take off. Yeah, if the clothing was more affordable, probably more people would wear it. But this is a movement as well. If I don't sell one item of clothing, it is important to me that I get enough people following me, paying attention. When I say following me, I mean following the Human Race Clothing website, the Facebook page, the Twitter, the Instagram, following it, so that when I put out these petitions, please spread awareness and everything. When I put out these petitions, the most important thing about this is I get enough signatures for these petitions and I get enough movement for human rights. If people are calling for it, that's enough. It doesn't have to necessarily be installed, but if you would just teach your children, I'm going to be calling for schools to teach, for the USA to give it to its citizens, and for the KKK to be banned. Okay, I'll move on to Article 26. Education is very important. A child could understand these articles if it was just explained properly to them. It's really important that people teach their children these articles if you want to see a better future. It's not about you, it's not about your personality, it's not about your pretty shoes or how presentable you are on YouTube and all the followers you've got and all the benefits you enjoy and how you use your talents to feed your family and how such of a wonderful person you are. It's not all about you, it's about the future, and it's important that you teach your children these human rights. It's very important. Moving on to Article 27. Article 27. Everyone has the right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts, and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. Part 2. Everyone has the right to the protection of the moral and material interests resulting from any scientific literary or artistic production of which he is the author. Now that means that every person, like for example in schools, or every person should kind of know how to patent something or where to go to. Like if they have an idea, I know over here for free, if you have an idea, I think it's, I'm not sure if it's backed by the government, but there is a company that you can go to and you can speak to them and just send them sketches and they will tell you whether they think it's a good idea. And for a charge, they'll help you to do technical drawings and everything. But this means that cultural life of the community, arts and scientific advancement is something that the government should be taken seriously. It shouldn't just be left to Facebook and Silicon Valley to pour money into charities for development of coding or programming, or, you know, encouraging children to create things. It shouldn't just be left to charity of Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg. The country should have some type of system in place where people who have got something to offer can come and present it. Moving on to Article 28. Article 28. Everyone is entitled to a social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration can be fully realized. Everyone is entitled to the social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration. Okay, everyone is entitled to this, basically. To the social, to mean to live in a society, and international, like internationally in their country and abroad, how they should be treated. Everyone's entitled to social and international order in which the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration can be fully realized. Again, everyone is entitled. Everyone. Not on their merit, not on their hard work, not because their job gave them diabetes and huge circles under their eyes. Everyone. Regardless how hard they've worked or how intelligent they are not, how fashionable they are, how eloquent they are or are not, every person, everybody, as a human being. Article 29, Part 1. Everyone has duties to the community in which alone the free and full development of his personality is possible. Part 2. In the exercise of his rights and freedoms, everyone shall be subject only to such limitations as are determined by law, solely for the purpose of securing due recognition and respect for the rights and freedoms of others, and of meeting the just requirements of morality, public order, and the general welfare in a democratic society. Part 3. These rights and freedoms may in no case be exercised contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. Okay, Part 1 is saying that everyone has duties in a community in which alone the free and full. Everybody has duties in the community which their free and full development of their personality is possible. They shouldn't be restricted. You know, they should feel free to do what they want to do. And like we said earlier, if they're mentally ill, then they'll get the health care they need. Part 2, exercise of right for everyone shall be subject only to the limited by law. Okay. In the exercise of your rights and freedoms, everyone would only be limited by things that are determined by the law for the purpose of securing recognition and respect for the rights and freedoms of others and of meeting the just requirements. So, meaning that somebody would only be stopped because what they were doing was against the law, or it didn't recognize the respect and rights and freedoms of other people, or the meetings did not meet just, fair requirements of morality, public order, and general welfare of a democratic society. So here is listed how these rights are implemented, or how you go about it in a society, and saying that there will only be restrictions because you're breaking the law, because you're disrespecting and not recognizing other human rights, you're curtailing their freedoms, or your meetings do not meet the requirements for morality. You're having orgies in public, or you're disturbing public order. Children are being threatened on their way to school because of your Confederate flag, or the general welfare in a democratic society. You're just being undemocratic, unfair, and bullying. So it's laying out all the cases where you couldn't exercise your rights and freedoms. It wouldn't be a right or freedom to scare people, scare children, not recognize the rights and freedoms of others. You couldn't exercise your rights and freedoms to do any of those things. That's all being laid out here, and that's Article 29. Article 30. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or to perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms set forth herein. That's just reiterating Article 30 again, clearly. Because the other one says you can, but not if. You can, except if, but this one is reiterating it and saying under no circumstances, nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, group, or person any right to engage in any activity or to perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms set forth herein. There is no privilege, there is no understanding, there is no full sense of entitlement that you can draw upon to interpret this as being for your state, for your group, or for your person, and there is no way you can find herein the right to engage in any activity or perform any act aimed at the destruction of any of the rights and freedoms of others who you see as less privileged, who you see as not entitled to what you're entitled to. There is no way you can use this to harm them and to stop them from having their human rights. So it's not a trick, it's not a joke. People need to get on this. If you don't have healthcare, you need human rights. You don't get leisure time. You have to work 2 jobs. You only get 6 hours sleep 7 days a week. You're about to drop down dead. You're stressed. You need human rights. Can't afford your healthcare. You need human rights. Your government is hiking up your healthcare and your drugs, and you're thinking of just getting yourself put in prison so you can get taken care of. You need human rights. You're being stopped arbitrarily for no reason. You need human rights. You have no protection against unemployment. Your partner's just died and you don't even have time to grieve. You have to pick up yourself and go to work. Can't even afford healthcare. Your gas and your car payments make it not even worth your while going to work. But you have to, because who else is going to? No, you need human rights. You are gifted, but you cannot afford college. So you think you need to go and strip or do that or do this to pay for college? No, you need human rights. You would enter college based upon your merit. People are assembling, they're threatening you, they're saying and behaving in ways that make you feel threatened for whatever reason that they feel. You need human rights. There are injustices and your country is not paying attention. You need human rights. You cannot afford to feed yourself. You're homeless. You need human rights. You're mentally ill, living on the streets. You're homeless. You have no family. You're a vulnerable adult. You need human rights. and so does everybody else, for safety from your mental illness. You're depressed, you just can't cope, you feel like you're going to snap, you're going to have a nervous breakdown. You need to get time off because you're sick, you're depressed. You need human rights. There's so many things. But all we see is personalities overcomplicating everything. When it's oversimplified, all these characters, all of this crying, all of this talking that everybody's become addicted to, how many of these people are calling for human rights? How many of these people who are against racial profiling are calling for human rights? How many of these people who are in favour of religious freedoms are calling for human rights? How many of these people who want healthcare that is free for all are calling for human rights? How many of these people who don't want to see pipelines being run through a community are calling for human rights? How many of these people who want the government to act in a way that is favourable for climate change for the future, or to even acknowledge everybody's effort, their dignity? How many people are calling for human rights, for their dignity? I really don't see it. It's oversimplified. It's there right in your face. Human rights. And even if it's not politics, it's not, look at this Article 30. Nothing in this declaration may be interpreted as implying for any state, group or person. Maybe people are used to politics, biting them in the behind or not being for them. But the fact is, you are in a society. Call for the society you want and make it better. And I'm sure you don't want politicians like this who call white supremacists very fine people, and football players who protest injustice, sons of bitches. I'm sure you don't want a society like that. And I'm sure you don't want your children to grow up to be like the people who are invigorated by all this nonsense. And I'm sure you don't have to talk about this for the next 20 years. I'm sure you don't want to cry. I'm sure you don't want to bury any more people. I'm sure you must be sick of seeing people being gunned down in the street by police, and violence in your neighbourhoods, and unemployment. And you must be tired. You must be tired from working 6 days a week. You must be tired of being afraid from mentally ill or homeless people on the streets, or veterans on the streets, homeless after serving your country. You must be tired of all of this. And I can't understand why nobody is calling for human rights. So, thanks for listening. I hope I made it very relatable and understandable. This is the Declaration of Human Rights. For a free copy of a CD about human rights, click the link below where you can get a free copy to show your family. This declaration has been highlighted and read by Zahava Talia Orli on YouTube on behalf of the Human Race Clothing. Our aim is to get the KKK banned, number 1. Number 2, to petition for human rights in the USA, number 3. And finally, to petition for those countries providing free education to teach children these articles as a part of the national curriculum. Please share these articles and spread awareness. Thank you.